Hi everyone, my name is Christina. I am here today with my friend Emily again. And if you haven't watched our video from a few weeks ago, we were talking about the topic of neuroplasticity and how to hack your brain to change your life. So I decided to have Emily as my guest again because we want to do a series of videos for you guys and just delve into these topics a little bit deeper and in detail. And Emily is just amazing at doing research and basically getting information and digesting it for people to understand it with a little more ease. And so, because of her background in public health and health in general, I felt like she's the perfect person for this topic. And so, today we're delving deeper into what is neuroplasticity? What does that really mean? How do thoughts become reality? So those are some of the things I want to discuss with her today. And hopefully you find value in the information that we present so you can apply it in your everyday life and create change for yourself and then change for others in your life. Because ultimately that's really how we can create change in this world, starting from ourselves, teaching it to others around us, and then those people spreading the knowledge and sharing with the rest. So Emily, welcome back. Thank you so much for being with me today. I love seeing your smiley face. So tell us really what does neuroplasticity mean, right? We discussed it a little bit in my previous video. I'll link it down below for those people that haven't watched it. So let's just get into it and tell us what does that mean? What the heck is neuroplasticity?
So, as you mentioned in our last introductory video, we talked a little bit about why it's so important to be conscious of our thoughts and the fact that we can actually control our thoughts in order to manifest a certain reaction or behavior or change in our lives, because we have more control over that than we thought, than we really believe too. And so neuroplasticity is just the idea that things are plastic. And the original word for plastic actually came from the fact that things were malleable. So in terms of plastic surgery or plasticity, plastic was a material, a synthetic material that was able to be shaped into different forms so that you can get different size containers, different shape containers. And it's the fact that neuroplasticity is that you're doing that with your neuronal wirings and your brain and your thoughts. And I think before we go into the simple science of it, we'll keep the science simple. It's important to understand that neuroplasticity really is employing the placebo effect. And everyone's heard of the placebo effect. So I think it's important to address what that is first and dispel some maybe thoughts or impressions that we have, whether they're negative or positive about the placebo effects, because I've heard kind of mixed reactions to the placebo effect. A lot of people are kind of sure that it works, or sometimes they're not, but they often feel defrauded by the placebo effect as well, because we always hear it in the context of medicine and science and giving one group a fake pill in order to see how they come out of the situation, and giving another group the actual thing. So we're here today to explain and delve into what is the placebo effect a little bit in order to understand better what neuroplasticity is and how that ramifies into our life and our behavior. I would say that the placebo effect is essentially using the power of thought, employing it in order to get a certain outcome. But it's you believing that belief with such conviction that you actually think it to be true. And your thought is so strong in that it kind of arouses a certain emotional reaction to it. Like, this is going to happen for me. This is going to happen for me. It's much like the cancer patients who realized that they had, let's say, a 2-month span to live. And they thought, you know what? I have a family. I need to fight. I need to live. And I'm going to live. I'm going to live. And saying that enough with so much conviction that their body starts to believe what their thoughts are saying, even if it's not yet true, even if we don't know the outcome yet. So that's what the placebo effect is. And I'd like to take a moment here to also address that In the context of the sugar pill and such, many people believe, well, yeah, but what if this thought isn't true? They start feeling a bit of the imposter syndrome. What if this thought isn't true? What if this is a sugar pill I'm taking? And how I can't, if you think that, you can't believe it. And if you don't believe it, then your body won't follow suit to it. So I'd like to offer a suggestion that in the end, if that thought gets you to where you need to be, helps you become a better person. If that thought, for example, is, I am worthy of my success. I am worthy of healing. I can heal. Who cares if that thought was kind of a fake it till you make it type of thing? Did it get to where you wanted to go? Did it reveal the results that you intended to get to? So if you're getting from point A to point B, I think of it like this. Whatever gets you there so that you feel like a better person living a more fulfilled life it doesn't matter what that vehicle is. I can take a bike from point A to point B. I can take a car from point A to point B. I can walk there. Does it matter? So I encourage you in this discussion to have a little bit of blind faith in it and not get caught so much on whether this is really a sugar pill or the real pill, the thought, and what is the effects that it's going to have for you at the end? Is it getting you to where you need to go?
I love that. Can I relate that to acupuncture, right? In Chinese medicine, specifically because in one of the books of classical acupuncture by Anne Cecil Sturman, there's a quote by Jeffrey Yuan who says, if the patient doesn't believe and if the practitioner doesn't believe, the medicine is not going to work, right? And because acupuncture is such an energetic practice, a lot of people just don't know if it works. How does this work? You're inserting needles into certain acupuncture points. Do these points even exist? So when you said that blind faith and really just going with it, it's like, what do you have to lose? Maybe you were taking migraine medications for years, and that migraine medication helps to an extent, but you have to keep taking that medication for the rest of your life. You believe that that medication is going to help you, but it's not really treating the root cause of your issue. So it is helping in a way, but it's really not solving the big, deep issue why you have those migraines in the first place. So when we talk about acupuncture and that belief, it's like, yeah, for some people, it works amazingly well. And for some people, it just doesn't happen. They have that chronic back pain. They say, oh, I tried one acupuncture treatment and it didn't work. So first of all, not one thing is going to help you from one time, right? Taking one pill for your back pain or your migraine, it's not going to make it go away forever. So it's that continued belief that we put into whatever we're doing, whether it's acupuncture treatments or whether it's taking a pill for migraines. We believe that it's going to work and it ends up working. But if we don't believe, it might work to an extent, but ultimately it's not going to change you in the long run, right? Does that make sense? That kind of relates to what you're saying?
Absolutely. I think that what you and I are both essentially expressing is that you have to want it. If you're, before, as a precursor to all of this neuroplasticity work, all the meditation, all this stuff about like, oh, I wish for this and I want to be a good person, and you had to really want it, and you can't fake that. So I think that when you really want something, whatever that is, whether it's to heal or to become X type of person, you have to really believe it in your bones, like they say, so that when you are getting this, you're saying, I am one step closer to healing. I'm one step closer to stepping in that hologram of who I want to be. And that's exactly what you sound like you're expressing through acupuncture. You have to believe to some extent that this is helping you. I'm doing this because it's taking me another step closer. And without the energy supporting the actual physiological things, the medical things that are happening, you've got, it's just half of an effort. that the medicine and all these external things, when people are treating you, doctors, etc., medication, these things are only kind of buttressing you to kind of lift you over the edge so that you can climb up into something, I like to think. But you need to move your body. You need to step those steps. You need to pull yourself up. You need to want it.
So there's that strong emotional imprint, right? That's necessary for us to then take action for change to actually occur. So it's not like, yeah, I am skinny, I am healthy, right? You know,
Exactly.
that cliche that people usually go to when they hear like thoughts become things or we can manifest. But it's really like, okay, it's this passion of mine, it's this drive. I want to heal, or I want to be more fit, or whatever the desire is. But the strength of that desire changes something inside of you chemically, right? And then it moves you to act. And then that action takes you forward through steps and years and whatever, right? So can you explain that a little bit better for people? I'm just kind of like, dumbing it down.
No, yeah, sure. So we've covered kind of outside the onion, right? We're on this outside layer of what neuroplasticity is, how neuroplasticity employs the placebo effect. And when you want something, that it manifests, that the thought is so strong that it becomes a thing. And a lot of the questions I get, though, is, but how? We get it's cliche. It's a cliche that's often said, so it must be true to some extent. Enough people in this universe have experienced it in order for it to become this common saying. So how does your thought convert into a thing? How does something so intangible and invisible turn into something that is visible and tangible? And that's the gap I'd like to bridge today. Really describe, when you're getting from point A to point B, the thought to a thing, what does that bridge exactly look like, and what's happening on a biological level in your body so that things kind of actually start to occur. So in the topic of, let's say, health, when I think to myself, I want to heal, I want to get better, I want to feel whole again, I want to just be at peace with where I am and what I'm feeling and in this process. When you start thinking those things and you want it so bad, when you want something so bad and you imagine it, what happens? Something that excites you, whether that's Disney World, whether that's the thought of buying a new car, whether it's getting your, your retirement, vacation home. When those things mean something to you, you get excited. In other words, when you simply imagine a picture, it doesn't even have to be real yet. You just think about it, picture it in your head, and you get goosebumps. There's a physiological reaction to that thought. So now you're already seeing how a thought can potentially become one thing by manifesting into a physiological reaction. So when I get goosebumps, that emotional arousal that you get, that moment of like excitement, is actually proof that you are really feeling with conviction that that thing is something that you want. That's how we know usually, because our body doesn't lie. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking of something that I want to become or that I would like in my life. And I think about it with such vivid imagery that I get excited about it. My body has a physiological reaction to it. And that physiological reaction, if you peel back the layer of what's going on underneath on your neurons are basically wired in a certain way. This is my everyday life. I live in X type of home. I live in this kind of life, but I want something different. So when you keep telling yourself over and over and over, I'm going to get this, I'm going to be this, I am this, I already embody this, your neurons actually start listening to you. As I mentioned in the past interview, your cells and your body parts and your neurons are like these little things that are spying on every thought that you have. And all they do is carry out orders. So you can think what they want, whatever you want. They're not going to discriminate between bad and good. They're just going to carry out orders. So if you start thinking, I am this, I am going to be a healed person, I'm going to be whole, I'm going to be worthy, your chemistry over time starts changing, where the neurons that were wired before start kind of pulling apart and rewiring in a different way. that makes you believe, that your body believe that you are actually that thing, that hologram that you've created in your mind.
Mm.
And when that rewiring, that unwiring and the subsequent rewiring happens, is when your body is starting to now send signals down this new path where your cells, your organs, your functioning, your state of mind starts to become in alignment with what your thought is. So in the unwiring and rewiring, that's why it takes a little bit of time. It takes a lot of unconditioning, of breaking down past beliefs about ourselves, past things that reinforce what kind of identity we have, and recreating a new one that maybe hasn't been reinforced yet in any way. That's why the visualization practice and the consistency and the persistence with it is so important. So on a neurochemical level, to summarize it, basically what you're doing is by telling yourself that, repeating things, your neurons are listening and they start rewiring in ways that make that thought the norm, the new thought.
How do these neurons communicate? Because so neurons are brain cells, right? And brain cells, just like any other cells in the body, they communicate with each other. So there are these webs of communication, if you will.
Yes.
So how do these neurons connect with each other and send these messages and signals for change?
So I think that the best way to simplify it, and for example, I brought here 2 plugs, right? There are 2 plugs that you insert an actual plug into this socket or this socket. Let's say all of your life, you have been conditioned or wired, or your past experiences make you believe that this is true. So your nerve synapses, this is called a synapse in between. And the nerve that's connected to, let's say, your brain, this side, and this is, let's say, the nerve that communicates with the physiological response of your body. These guys are wired right now, and they're constantly communicating. And because this is constantly the same path, you're prone to think the same thing over and over and over again. This is who I am, etc., whatever your belief is. Now, when you start changing that thought, and it's going to be very uncomfortable because it's going to feel unfamiliar, it's going to feel false. When you start changing that thought over and over and over with enough conviction, it's kind of like saying like, oh, I want to pull these apart. And then you pull it apart and you unwire this. So all of a sudden, your old habits that you want to discard, your old identity that's not serving you anymore, they can't communicate. So this thought is no longer triggering a physiological action. So this is a thought neuron, this is the action neuron. No longer are they connected and they can no longer communicate. Now you say to yourself, I want to build a new habit. I want to build a new thought mentality. I want to have a different identity. So out of these 2, let's say I drop the old thought, I have this new one. Now these guys are free to connect. And all of a sudden you're saying, I believe I'm worthy. I believe I'm healing. This is the thought neuron, the new thought neuron. I can do this. I am wealthy. I am happy. I am an amazing individual. And then all of a sudden, the response neuron to it will start coming together and start wiring. And it's a little hesitant at first, right? Because it feels unfamiliar. This is kind of weird. Should I plug into you or not? And then the moment that it does is when you have now 2 synapses now connected again in a new thought. And that's when now your habit, the practice of a new action or a thought that you're doing becomes a habit. And we covered this in the last episode as well. When this stays wired, because you need to maintain it. Once it's plugged in, it doesn't always stay there like this one, like this actual physical plug. You need to keep it maintained there and say, I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy. And this side will start responding physiologically and believing that you're worthy. And how does that manifest? You start having more confidence. You start feeling like you can go out and talk to people. If you had anxiety before, you can do it. All of a sudden, you create this new identity. But you need to keep these 2 guys talking constantly in order for them to stay connected. Because what happens when you do not work on something? Well, eventually they start drifting apart again. So that's why we said, and this is on the biological level of what's happening how an action becomes a habit, and a habit sustained over time becomes an attitude. And the attitude sustained over a longer time becomes your temperament, and that temperament becomes your personality. So until it gets to that stage, you need to keep working at it.
That's why it can take so long. And I feel like a lot of people get discouraged, even in my work with patients and clients, it's like, I want results now. And it's like, well, wait a minute, how many years have you been operating on this level of the mind and doing the same things over and over? Like, you wake up, you put up your clothes on the same way, the same foot goes through the same, legging or whatever. You brush your teeth with your right or your left, depending on what your dominant hand is. But it's really when you decide to change even those little habits throughout the day. So I have people that work with me closely in my program. It's like I make them brush their teeth with their left hand if they're a dominant righty, or put their clothes on a different way, just so they can start to change those everyday patterns that have kept them the same. It's like, how can you expect to change if you don't change anything in your life? Again, going back to that, yes, you could be thinking about it, but again, if that thought doesn't have action to follow it, change is going to be so slow. And I love the description of how to get to that change is really by changing the habits, and then getting to that level of change within your personality, which can take years, right?
Sure. It's decades of unlearning.
Exactly.
Unlearning the programming that have now become automated. So I'd like to just highlight, I think you bring up a great point. Changing habits in your clients and in having them use the opposite hand, that's going to feel uncomfortable. For everyone, it's like asking you to write with the opposite hand. So a good marker, I would say, if you're going through this process and you're trying this, a good marker is to get ready, because you're going to feel uncomfortable. And that's going to be your signal that you're going in the right direction.
But can you tell me about your personal experience with that? Because I know we were talking in our last interview a little bit about your injuries, and when you kind of forced yourself to think a different way. And ultimately, I'm not going to say to heal yourself, but there was definitely a process of imagination, visualization, and you were confined to being at home and not being able to move. So can you, just for people who haven't seen our previous conversation, if you can touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah, great question. I'll preface my answer by saying that our bodies, our brains don't know how to tell the difference between an imagined experience and reality. That's why when you watch a movie, you're not in that scene where, let's say, the protagonist is running away from some sort of like somebody chasing her, but you feel that. This is where empathy comes in. This is where compassion comes in. You feel what's happening as if you're in there. So in that moment, you're so absorbed in it, your brain could partially think it's there. And you get goosebumps as if you were actually being chased, just like that person. So the same is actually with a dream. The same is with any kind of very, very deep meditation or visual experience. Your body doesn't know that it's dreaming, actually. That's why you can wake up in a cold sweat. That's why if you have a sad dream, you actually cry. Your body thinks it's there. The only reason why we end up knowing something is a dream is because you wake up and say, well, I'm not where I was a moment ago. I'm in my bed. Oh, right. That's the only thing. If you had stayed in that dream, you would have never known the difference between that and reality. So now it's like saying, instead of being triggered by these random dreams that happen, by the random movies that I decide to watch, why not be in the driver's seat and imagine what I want to happen, so that my brain, if it can't tell the difference between what reality currently is and the imagery that I'm using to visualize, let's say a hologram, we always call this a hologram, like become the hologram that you would want to step into and eventually take the shape of. Why can't you be in the driver's seat of that and picture what it is you want? So with respect to my injury, I had I had physical injuries as well as a lot of kind of emotional things going on. I'll just talk about the physical aspect. And what happened is I had just some health issues that led to immense swelling over time and a lot of this water retention. And it happened so suddenly. I think that I had shot up and just swollen out maybe a good 30 pounds of water weight in 2 weeks. And you could just feel my flesh was just hot. And it was just, I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror. It was quite a mind-blowing experience. So in any case, the result of that was that my little frame wasn't used to supporting that much weight. And so suddenly at that, I was very weak at that time. And I had gotten a slip disc after that because my spine kind of just collapsed. And I was bedridden for probably the next 2 years. I couldn't move much. I wasn't sure what was going on. All I could do was really lie there. And I had a lot of time to think about my life and why this was happening. And I was very angry. I didn't understand what wrongdoing I could have committed in life to deserve this. Mm-hmm. And somehow it came to a point where, as I was going through that, I just simply wanted to be free from, I'd been told that my spine had kind of collapsed. So I already had this visual that the two vertebrae that's sitting on top of each other and the jelly donut that's in the middle of the disc had just kind of like plopped onto the donut. So I had that visual in my mind, and I thought to myself, well, like, if all of this imagery stuff and manifestation is true, what do I have to lose? I can't continue. If where I am right now isn't helping me and there's no change, well, what do I have to lose in believing something or picturing something so much that maybe it'll happen? I have no other thing. And when you're that desperate, you will try anything. So I think I lied there, and I was constantly face down. And I think I would just picture my back just relaxing and releasing. And all of a sudden, just the sheer lying down and meditating, first of all, it calmed me down. It calmed down my nervous system, which is a great precursor to having your body kind of regulate itself. Your nervous system needs to be regulated first. You need to be at a point of equanimity, which is equilibrium of the mind. And I would just picture myself, well, what would happen if now this kind of smushed jelly donut, if things just relaxed and just separated themselves, gave it room to kind of breathe under there and realign itself. And I thought that every day because I didn't have anything else to do. It was my last lifeline. And I would think of it and just picture it and picturing it as if my thoughts could command these cells to go there and move the way I wanted to. And what I was really doing wasn't necessarily sending cells there, shooting cells over there to like move things. What I was really doing is unwiring certain things, like a pain association I had with that, and rewiring other things. And the nerves would start to kind of build in that area, or so I felt, because after a while, the pain would just subside. And I realized at that time too, pain is just a perceptive thing. Like I'm feeling something, yes, discomfort, but it doesn't have to be associated with like necessarily pain. So once I got accustomed to that concept, accepted it, had conviction, like we mentioned before, I think that the pain started subsiding as well. And that gave it room for me not to resist because there wasn't such a unpleasant like physical stimulation anymore in the way of my progress. So letting go of the pain and disconnecting myself from the unpleasant association that I had with pain, or that we all have with pain. And then once I peeled that layer off, I could get to more work in terms of thinking, I'm healing. My spine is realigning. It's creating space in between. It's uncollapsing, so to speak, almost like I was rewinding the video of the collapse, where I was just reversing that. And of course, it takes some other supplemental work. Like I did exercise and moved and got the blood flowing and the lymph flowing too. But the important part was I wanted it so badly. I wanted it so much that I started thinking so strongly with such conviction that I started believing that it was happening. And I didn't care if it was actually happening or not, that whether that thought was real or not, what was going on. I was seeing effects after a while, and that's all that mattered. I was getting from my point A to point B. I didn't care how. And that thinking that way helped me. So a lot of the pain subsided, a lot of the back, I regained full mobility. And I try, and again, like we said with the plug example, you need to keep it maintained. You need to keep the right synapses connected, the right thoughts in place. Because the minute I catch myself, the minute I lose that concentration of thought and I get into a thing where it's just like, oh God, I don't want to start running anymore because my back's going to hurt. It actually does start hurting. It's the weirdest thing. So I had to stay there. So that's what happened with my physical injury and how I used neuroplasticity and the placebo effect to my advantage to start believing in creating the hologram of the spine that I wanted. And I know it sounds a little bit unbelievable, but all I can say is it went away. That's all I can say. My x-rays came out better. There's a lot of relief off of the pressure I was feeling. So that's all I can say. I don't know.
Good. Now, because we're doing a series of little episodes, just delving deeper into these topics, and because what you mentioned about dreams, right? And the dreams can be so freaking vivid. Like I've had dreams where I wake up and I'm like, man, I'm tired. Like I feel exhausted because my dream was so active, and I remember details. Like I remember everything from the dream. Now, obviously, sleep is extremely important, right, for our overall health, because yes, we can be doing all these lovely things and intentions and meditations and actions to get us to where we want to be, but our lifestyle really matters. So if we don't sleep well, if we don't eat well, ultimately certain systems within our body are not going to operate optimally and correctly.
Right.
So I just want to segue a little bit into what we will be talking about in our next conversation, in our next episode, and that's, you know, the why sleep is so important, the quality of our sleep, and because of what you said about dreams and how it can be such a real experience. Can you just tell our audience a little bit about that topic, and then we'll go in depth next time?
Sure. I'm giving a little bit of I'm training people on sleep these days because it moves a little bit away from the neuroplasticity. And if you imagine kind of a pyramid of things that you can kind of work on, your body needs to be at an optimal state where it can rest. I think that's at the very baseline of the pyramid. It's a foundational thing. No matter how much neuroplasticity work you do, no matter how much meditation you do, no matter how much you do these good things, if you're not working off of a good foundation, that house can collapse at any point. So the idea and the reason for which I'm addressing sleep is because sleep is not just about letting your body rest, cool down its batteries so that you can function the next morning. There's much, much more that goes on beyond the visible eye when you sleep. That's everything from detoxification to regulating hormones again, and regulating your nervous system, producing even like what you don't and do want to remember. We see tons of things throughout the day, and it needs to get to a place in the sleep where it's so deep enough that it starts to discard all those mental images that you don't need, and then take the important images and archive them into the long-term memory. But the problem is that doesn't happen just by sleeping and waking up. Even if you get 8 hours, if your sleep isn't quality, it's not about the quantity of hours, it's about the quality. If your sleep isn't quality, if it doesn't get not even just to REM sleep, but past REM sleep into other stages, beyond REM sleep, there's a dreaming state as well, kind of overlaps with REM. There's a dreaming state where you'll start to dream things, the emotions that come up, the things that you haven't maybe processed or worked through. And if you stay in that deep sleep, that quality sleep long enough, those dreams eventually start getting archived into a long-term memory so that when you wake up, you can actually remember them. So a sign of good quality sleep that your body reached its optimal stage of healing and detoxification is that when you dream, you can wake up and remember that dream. And a lot of people think, oh, when you're dreaming, your mind is active, so you're only kind of half asleep. No, actually, that's when you get into the deepest thoughts. So it's kind of contrary. And I use that as a marker to indicate whether you've had quality sleep or not. And the reason that this quality sleep is so important is if this sleep is good quality and it's successfully discarding all the maybe the unnecessary images, that mental images that you had, all the clutter in your brain, detoxifying all of your organs, and helping you regulate your nervous system. And I say nervous system, a lot of us are kind of like in flight or fight mode, maybe depending on what kind of city you live in. If you live in New York City, definitely that's the case, you're on all the time. Or maybe you have past trauma, or it could be generational trauma that you have and you don't even realize because it's become the norm for you. Your nervous system is still in a, when do I have to get ready? Flight or fight mode. Yeah. And to some people, it's gone beyond that into a state where it's kind of in a shutdown mode, where you're just kind of, a lot of military people, you'll see this in, where they just have no affect anymore. They'll kind of just shut down. And that's when it's, the computer's been on flight and fight so much that the computer just starts to shut down. So sleep brings you back to that normal functioning part where you feel safe, where you feel regulated, where you feel equanimity and equilibrium. And that needs to be a precursor to any neuroplasticity work that you decide to do, because you have to start from a solid foundation of good health. So if you're having trouble with meditation, for any of you who are, it's not your fault or a lack of discipline, or that you're not using the right music or the right meditation guide. Check out your nervous system. Look into your past. It could be all those things just built up into your system, not letting it relax so that you can get into meditation. And I say this from personal experience, in just 10 years of just being activated. And then finally, when my sleep started becoming quality, meditation was just like, just a baby step up. It was so easy to just slip into it. Yeah. So the neuroplasticity work became much easier.
That's awesome. That's exactly what I can't wait to talk more about this topic, because I'm super passionate about it as well. You know, and I'm one of those people that remembers their dreams very easily, not every day, but definitely I remember my dreams, and I know when I don't have that quality sleep that it's much harder for me to create my reality, to have a better perspective about the things that are happening around me. And then if I don't have that quality sleep, when I don't have that restful mode, I am just more reactive, and I feel like things are just happening to me and I can't do anything about it. And that's when I'm more emotional. And when I say emotional, I don't mean like, yes, we should be aware of our emotions, but I don't want to be swept up by them that I can't control myself.
Yeah.
Excuse me, myself. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much again for joining me for yet another conversation. And we will be doing a few more episodes like this. So next time we will be talking about the importance of quality sleep and some more topics. So for our audience for today, thank you again, Emily, for being here with me. And we will see you next time.
Yeah, I would like to say thank you for just having me here, and I hope it was helpful. And I hope that the sleep discussions are helpful too. It'll take a very practical approach on, you know, what's happening in sleep that we don't know about, and also what are some ways that you can get better sleep, so things that you can employ immediately in your immediate environment. So please join us for that.
Awesome. And as always, if you like this content, please like and subscribe so we can share more of this information and knowledge with you, so we can make our lives better. Thank you again for joining me, and see you next time.